Good morning. Welcome to the Bell and Pollock Legal Show. I'm Gary Bell, along with Brad Pollock. Our law firm is Bell and Pollock. We are injury attorneys here to educate you, to teach you about a different injury subject each week. And we do it so we can give you this information so you can be empowered to help yourself, to analyze what's going on when you've been injured. And as always, you can give us a call at 303-795-5900. If you've been injured, you get a free initial consultation and you get a free legal game plan. And don't forget to go to our website, championsofthepeople.com. That's championsofthepeople.com. It's an information-loaded website. And one of the most popular features there is a feature called Meeting by Accident. If you go to our website, championsofthepeople.com, and click on Meeting by Accident, you can get the answers to the most commonly asked questions people ask when they've been involved in an automobile accident. Okay, today, what do you know about big trucks? What do you know about big rigs? Big rigs, 18-wheelers, buses, motor carriers, commercial motor vehicles. Do you know what the definition is? Do you know how important it is? Is it even a different event than an ordinary car crash? And I tell you what, it's not. There's different rules and regulations that apply. Car crashes by themselves can be very devastating. Obviously, as you know, we do that kind of work. But accidents with big rigs, 18-wheelers, are governed by the federal motor carrier safety rules and regulations. We're just going to call them the regulations or the rules. They're passed by the federal government. They have jurisdiction to do it. They're very stringent. There's hundreds and hundreds of rules, and the companies and the carriers and the driver must comply. And so you're going to need an experienced attorney if you've been involved in a truck car accident, a truck commercial vehicle. These rules apply, and you need to have attorneys who understand the rules of Bell and Pollock. We understand these rules. We've done trucking cases for years. And if you've been involved in a trucking accident, we can help put your life back together again. Our telephone number, 303-795-5900. Okay, the first thing we want to do is to lay a groundwork, a foundation, to tell you that if you're in an accident, you need to look at the driver. You need to separately look at the company. You need to look at the carrier to see what happened here. Were they supervised properly? Were they trained properly? Were they hired properly? But today we're going to focus more on the driver. And we're going to do this in at least a two-part series, and we're going to cover the company, but maybe not today. But you know the driver, Brad, there's rules and regulations. There's some new changes as far as, hours of service, and this was all designed to keep them not being fatigued, to keep them rested, to keep them alert so that these accidents are prevented.
That's correct. The purpose behind the new regulations was to address the very problem that they'd been seeing. They anticipated that by the new regulations that were being passed, they would save at least 19 lives, at least 540 injured persons, and about 1,400 truck crashes by simply increasing the amount of time a truck driver has between shifts and reducing the amount of time that a truck driver can work during the week from 82 hours to 70 hours. Now, stop and think about it. You'd think this is a no-brainer. Now, the trucking industry and certain entities are fighting the rules. They sought a rollback of this information or these regulations. The rollback was in progress when the Tracy Morgan crash happened. Because they think the fatigue might have been involved in that, everybody reassessed it. Booker and Menendez out of New Jersey have said, wait a minute. They're the congressman out of New Jersey who said we're going to fight the rollback. But just stop to think about it. You're telling a person they have to be on the road or they have to be working for 82 hours in a week?
Right. I mean, it's kind of interesting, both sides of the coin, but the United States Senate was in the process of attempting to roll back, meaning make more liberal, meaning remove some of these restrictions, the driving restrictions. They were under pressure from the trucking industry, because the trucking industry had to have these truckers on the road. But what about the safety of the victims? You know, Brad, we've done these cases for years, and when you have a trucking car crash, it is usually horrific. It's not just kind of middle of the road. It's not just kind of small or slight. It's usually horrific. It's devastating. And when you say, the statistics were estimated to save 19 lives, and all of these truck crashes and all of these car crashes, then that's what they were designed at. So they were making the situation where the drivers could not drive as much during the week. They couldn't drive as long on each shift. And that was what the whole fight was about.
Well, sometimes things just have to make common sense. And, profit isn't a bad word. Everybody in business is trying to make a profit. But becoming greedy, it can be a bad word. And that greed can be when you have trucking industries or trucking companies, or you have companies who rely on trucking and shipping. And that can be a lot of the companies who supply products to you. When they become so profit driven and they want such large profits that they start to put at risk the people who are out on the roads that eventually will be buying the products that they're trying to ship. And you stop to think about it. You're saying, think about what we're talking about. 82 hours a week, of work a week, 82 hours.
Right. That's a lot. And they reduced it to 70.
And there's complaints. They're saying this isn't working. They tell them they have to let their truckers have a 30-minute break during the first 8 hours of work. How many of you go to work for 8 hours and don't get a break at all? For a straight 8 hours.
Or don't even get up and walk around or talk or go to the water cooler or take a break outside or some people take a smoke break, something like that.
How many of you would agree to it? How many of you would agree to working 70 hours a week or even working 82 hours a week? I mean, think about how many hours we're talking about. 82 hours is 8 hours a day. You can't do it in 7 days. That's only 56 hours. So,
right. So these rules, what we're trying to tell you is that the new rules on this particular subject, there's hundreds of these rules, if not thousands of them, but these new rules reduce the amount of time per week that a driver can drive from 82 hours to 70 hours, and then has to have mandatory breaks, etc. There's other rule changes as well, but we're focusing right now on that one. So one of the first things we look at, one of the first things experienced attorneys look for in a truck car crash, which is usually devastating and horrific, is driver fatigue. And the Tracy Morgan case, we don't know the facts of that. We are not hired in that case, et cetera. But they reported that driver was extremely fatigued, and that was the report. But that's what good lawyers look for.
Yeah, the report was that the driver hadn't slept for 24 hours. Now, we can get into it a little bit because we all know that it's very difficult to test for no sleep. Sometimes drivers or individuals themselves do not know the consequences, and they don't understand what it means when they haven't been sleeping, how it changes them, or they can't assess how it's changing their ability to drive. Truck drivers themselves in testing have shown that they can't assess themselves. So you have to have some hard and fast rules. And, the state patrolman, and I think it's being disputed by the truck driver that he hadn't slept for 24 hours, and he'd been on the job for 24 hours, or hadn't slept, I think is what they're claiming. We know probably what the state patrol worked off of. We know what the troopers worked off of. They probably went to the logbooks.
Right.
And if they got behind the logbooks, they might have done that because there's ways to get behind the logbooks. Whether the driver and how he disputes and what he says is a different question.
Well, it is. And we're going to tell you in the last half of this program how you approach trying to figure out if the driver's fatigued, because they're not going to admit it. They're going to deny it. Sometimes they're taking illegal drugs as they drive. Sometimes they're taking legal prescription drugs. So that's a whole different subject, whole different area, but it's very, very relevant to this thing. But how do you prove somebody was fatigued? And we're going to get into that. But the statistics show, Brad, just as you said, that the increase in the accidents, and these are horrific accidents. I mean, think about it. 60 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour. These huge trucks rolling down the road. When I pass a truck, I try to get around that truck as fast as I can. I'm not going to be beside it. I'm not going to be around it. But, if a driver, let's look at this. If a driver falls asleep for just 4 seconds, think about that. 4 seconds. While going at about 60, 65 miles an hour, the car's going to go about 80, 90 feet with no control of the vehicle. 80, 90 feet. I mean, that can hit into traffic. It can be in a commercial area. It could be in a residential area. It could be on a highway in a residential area. And so, 80, 90 feet is very significant. One more thing is that about 20% of the fatal road accidents involve driver fatigue. That's 1/5. But the most interesting thing to me is they've estimated this. I mean, this costs about an extra $3 billion a year. But a driver who's been awake for 17 hours 17 hours is the equivalent of a blood alcohol reading of 0.05. And if a driver's been awake for 24 hours, I think that's what they said in the Tracy Morgan case, right. 24 hours, then it's the equivalent of a blood alcohol level of 0.10, which is illegal. Think about that. You know, you've got to get this under control. You've got to do this. We got a break coming up. Right after the break, we're going to be talking about how you prove fatigue, how you prove these cases, what you look for. But understand, driver fatigue is the number one thing seasoned, experienced attorneys look at. Proving it's a different thing. You're listening to the Bell and Pollock Legal Show. Gary Bell, Brad Pollock. Our law firm is Bell and Pollock. We are injury attorneys. We bring the show to you to educate you. We've been doing it for a long time. You can go to our website, championsofthepeople.com. We're going to take a break, and we are your champions of the people.
Ready for an extraordinary lunch? As fast or as slow as you want it? With all fresh ingredients? Caitlin's Restaurant has it all. Express lunches that won't keep you waiting. Or, if you prefer, lunch served in that old-fashioned homemade style. All made fresh on the spot. Whether it's a fresh-made sandwich with homemade chips, quesadilla loaded with cheddar or jack cheeses, or scratch-made soups, you'll find everything you love at Caitlin's. Caitlin's is located on Mississippi just east of Colorado Boulevard next to Bookies. How about green chili chicken stew? Think about a variety of fresh-made sandwiches or 11 different kinds of burgers made to order with 1/2 pound of the finest USDA choice lean ground beef. You might favor a homemade New Mexican recipe with carne adobada burritos, chicken enchiladas, carnitas burritos, served with hash brown special recipe beans, cheeses with guacamole, and your choice of homemade red or green chili sauces. For those who prefer the lighter side, there are fresh made salads and lighter fares, sure to delight. Try Caitlin's for lunch or breakfast on Mississippi, just east of Colorado Boulevard next to Bookies. Call 303-798-6600. You'll love it every bite of the way.
What you see is what you get. What you don't hear is everything. Let's talk about silence. Old-fashioned silence. What does silence have to do with injuries? I'm going to give you about 3 seconds of silence. Here you go. Silence is what you get just before a collision. Sometimes in accidents, fast turns to slow and noise turns to silence. Then the collision, then the injuries, then the life-changing event, then starts the battle with the insurance company. Hi, I'm Gary Bell of the law firm of Bell and Pollock. At Bell and Pollock, we understand that those 3 seconds of silence can turn your life upside down. We know how devastating injuries can be. You may not be able to work. You have medical bills. You need treatment. Listen, don't get hurt twice. Once in the accident and again on the insurance claim. Talk to the lawyers who actually care about you, the injured victim. Bell and Pollock, Colorado's premier injury law firm. Our website is championsofthepeople.com or call us at 303-795-5900. One call, that's all. Good morning. Welcome back to the Bell and Pollock Legal Show. Our law firm is Bell and Pollock. Gary Bell here, Brad Pollock here. We're injury attorneys, and we're glad to do this show to educate you. Today we're talking about big rigs, truck liability, carrier liability, driver liability. But today's show we're focusing more on driver liability. But you cannot forget, you can never, ever forget to look at the company, to look at how they hire this driver, and do the proper screening process. However, today we're talking about drivers, and the first part of the show was on driver fatigue. Well, you say you have a big crash. It's a horrific crash. I just told you before the break that if a driver drives 24 hours without resting, it's the equivalent of a 0.10 blood alcohol level. And that is amazing. And that's what was alleged in the Tracy Morgan case. 24 hours the driver was driving, alleged, and so they're going to see if that comes true. But, Brad, how do experienced attorneys get down to the fact of proving this driver was fatigued? Because they all deny it. I wasn't fatigued. Here, look at my logs. I wasn't fatigued.
Well, the first thing you've got to do is make sure you get both sets of logbooks. And, this is not meant to offend truck drivers, and there's a number of truck drivers out there who I'm sure maintain honest and appropriate logbooks. Those truck drivers who have done that and continue to work are working for ethical companies, because a lot of times truck drivers are having to maintain a second set of logbooks or play with the records because they've got such pressure on the companies for whom they work to make sure that the product's delivered so they can make more profit. That being said, an experienced attorney tries to find out where the second set of logbooks is, and that's important because the second set of logbooks might actually tell you for sure whether or not this driver was getting the mandatory times. For instance, was he only driving 11 hours a day, or was he driving more? You can also look and track the truck. You track the truck through the GPS, or you track the truck through drop-offs, or you track the truck through times when it purchased gas, or when they stopped to eat, if they did stop to eat, or some of them stay in hotels or motels at night, and where did they stay? Because you can normally, and you find out the speed of the truck, and you can determine where the truck was at certain times, and you can determine whether or not this driver violated or the rules, or was up so long and had so little sleep, or should be suffering from fatigue because of simply looking at where he was and what he or she was doing and when they were getting to different locations.
Right. And you made a good point. There are a lot of ethical trucking companies out there, and there are a lot of ethical truck drivers. So this doesn't apply to you. It does apply to the people who try to bend the rules and cheat on the rules and cheat on the logs and have an extra set of logs. And one set of logs for the police and one set of logs that are actually true. But Brad's right. I mean, let me give you an example. You do a case where truck driver says, I was in Lexington, Kentucky, at such and such a time. Well, he ends up in Atlanta, Georgia, and on the GPS, he's different. He's in a different place. He's in Louisville. And so you look at the GPS of the company. That's why it's important to try to get those records. Many times you can't get the records, but also, as Brad mentioned, you look at the fuel receipts. I mean, if you fueled up in Atlanta at a certain time, then you couldn't have been in Lexington, Kentucky, because your fuel receipt, and you're the only driver, by the way, your fuel receipt in Atlanta shows a different date and time. So where were you, and where are the other sets of logs? So you have to back into it. You have to get through detailed discovery. You have to jump through the hurdles, jump over the hurdles, jump through the hoops, and then you can figure out, well, you really weren't in Lexington, Kentucky. You were in this other city over here, and therefore, if you drove that far to get there in that amount of time, you were fatigued. And there's no way you deny it, because the physical evidence shows you went from point A to point B when you said you were going to point C. That's just that simple.
You've got to track the route. Which way did they go? What turns did they make? Where were they going, and how are they going? So a lot of times you want to get that information from the truck driver. You want to get it as soon as possible. You want to find out exactly how and in what manner they got from point A to point B. And actually, where the accident happened should really, Gary, be about point E. Because you want to go back, you want to say you start at point A, you went at point A to point B, B to C, C to D, D to E, and that's where the accident happened. Because you want to retrace the last 4 or 5 days worth of driving. You want to find out whether or not they took the appropriate breaks. Remember, after the 70-hour week, which as of this date hasn't been rolled back, after the 70-hour week, they must rest for 2 nights, a total of 34 hours. But it's got to be 2 nights in that 34 hours.
Right, and this is all very critical and all deals with fatigue, and you can back it up. You can call us anytime at 303-795-5900, or in the mountains, you can call us at 970-870-8989. That's 870-8989. We have offices in the mountains as well. We can handle your calls, your cases. We are injury attorneys. With us, you get a free initial consultation. You get a free legal game plan. I can't tell you how important that is. You come in, you understand your rights, you understand what the insurance company is going to try to do to you. We preached for years, they're trained, they're highly trained, they have their own attorneys, you don't. They have their own medical doctors, you may or may not have. And they're well trained and they're against you. You need somebody on your side. So 303-795-5900, or in the mountains, 970-870-8989. Okay, today we're talking about this truck driver liability. We're talking about fatigue as the first subject, and it can be compounded by driving too long. But another thing people don't understand is drivers have to do a pre-trip inspection. That's part of your workday. That's part of what you're doing. I mean, so where is the pre-trip inspection on your logbooks? Well, and then the logbooks are wrong. Did you have a separate set of logs? Are they hidden somewhere? All this, and then where did you go? And as Brad said a minute ago, you left point A heading for point B, and then you went to point C, city X, city D. Well, how much time does it take to get there? And a lot of these fatigue drivers, the more fatigued they become, they push it, they drive faster and faster. And then, as I said a minute ago, if you've got some truck going at 60 to 65 miles an hour, and you lose 4 seconds of conscious driving ability. That truck probably goes 80 to 90 to 100 feet.
And remember that when you're talking about, which this is important to recognize, when you're talking about the work day, the truck has to be loaded and unloaded a lot of times. Now, if it's coming a long ways, maybe not. But if the trucker is been involved in the loading and unloading, he's on the job during that time period. So, you want to have an idea where he stopped and how long he was in wait to unload. When trucks pull up to a location to unload, a lot of times they have to wait for the trucks in front of them. Other times they can get it right in and unload. And the amount of time it takes to unload, they're on the job. That is important to recognize, and anybody, once again, recognizing a long week, think about it. We're talking about 11 to 14-hour days, 5-6 days a week without getting a break.
Right, and it's very devastating. It results in very horrible, horrific accidents. There's many of these rules and regulations, and we're trying to cover the highlights of some of them. But I got to tell you something. We got a break coming up, but some of these regulations, they pertain to emergencies, driver hours, as we've covered today, driver fatigue, as we've covered today, medical examinations, physical health of the driver, sleep apnea, rollover training, drug and alcohol testing. Do they have to be pre-screened and tested before they even get in the cab of the truck? Yes, they do. These are all covered by rules and regulations. There's a safety belt program, driver regulations, distracted driving, cell phone regulations. So we're going to be educating you on these as well. You can call us anytime, 303-795-5900. In the mountains, our number is 970-870-8989. That's 870-8989. You're listening to the Bell and Pollock Legal Show. We are Colorado's premier injury law firm, and we are your champions of the people.
Ready for an extraordinary lunch? As fast or as slow as you want it? With all fresh ingredients? Caitlin's restaurant has it all. Express lunches that won't keep you waiting. Or, if you prefer, lunch served in that old-fashioned homemade style. All made fresh on the spot. Whether it's a fresh-made sandwich with homemade chips, quesadilla loaded with cheddar or jack cheeses, or scratch-made soups, you'll find everything you love at Caitlin's. Caitlin's is located on Mississippi just east of Colorado Boulevard next to Bookies. How about green chili chicken stew? Think about a variety of fresh-made sandwiches or 11 different kinds of burgers made to order with 1/2 pound of the finest USDA choice lean ground beef. You might favor a homemade New Mexican recipe with carne adobada burritos, chicken enchiladas, carnitas burritos, served with hash browns, special recipe beans, cheeses with guacamole, and your choice of homemade red or green chili sauces. For those who prefer the lighter side, there are fresh made salads and lighter fares, sure to delight. Try Caitlin's for lunch or breakfast on Mississippi, just east of Colorado Boulevard next to Bookies. Call 303-798-6600. You'll love it every bite of the way.
What you see is what you get. What you don't hear is everything. Let's talk about silence. Old-fashioned silence. What does silence have to do with injuries? I'm going to give you about 3 seconds of silence. Here you go. Silence is what you get just before a collision. Sometimes in accidents, fast turns to slow and noise turns to silence. Then the collision, then the injuries, then the life-changing event, then starts the battle with the insurance company. Hi, I'm Gary Bell of the law firm of Bell and Pollock. At Bell and Pollock, we understand that those 3 seconds of silence can turn your life upside down. We know how devastating injuries can be. You may not be able to work. You have medical bills. You need treatment. Listen, don't get hurt twice. Once in the accident and again on the insurance claim. Talk to the lawyers who actually care about you, the injured victim. Bell and Pollock, Colorado's premier injury law firm. Our website is championsofthepeople.com or call us at 303-795-5900. One call, that's all. Good morning. Welcome back to the Bell and Pollock Legal Show. I'm Gary Bell, along with Brad Pollock. Our law firm is Bell and Pollock. We are injury attorneys. We've got a mountain office. We've got a Denver office. Our telephone numbers are 303-795-5900. In the mountains, you can call us at 970-870-8989. And anytime, you can call us toll-free at 1-800-559-5920. Today, we're talking about big rigs, truck drivers, fatigue. Okay, let's touch on a couple of different other subjects before we end this show. Brad, drivers sometimes say, well, I was taking medication, I was taking drugs, but they're legally prescribed. Here, I've got a prescription for it. And so that means I'm okay. That may not mean you're okay.
No, that doesn't mean you're okay. As a matter of fact, it has to be checked. The prescription has to be checked. You have to find out what effect it's having on the driver. And if it's one of those that can cause drowsiness or can cause problems, the driver may be disqualified from driving.
And that's the key word into the Federal Motor Rules, disqualified. Are you qualified or are you disqualified? I mean, when you're disqualified, you can't drive. And so you need attorneys who investigate this on these trucking accidents. Let's touch on another subject real quick, and it's one of interest in Colorado. Can a driver be on medical marijuana or marijuana and still drive their truck? And what do the regulations say about that?
The regulations are pretty clear on that. Nope, can't be certified. I mean, they don't even talk a whole lot about seeing what effect it's going to have. Basically, it's just, no, you can't be certified if you're taking medical marijuana.
You can't be certified. You're not qualified. You are disqualified. And so it's important for attorneys who represent injured victims to know these rules. It's important for you to know these rules because these truck crashes cause a lot of injuries. They cause deaths. They cause grief in families. And so how do you get to the bottom line? How do you get to the liability of these companies and these drivers? This is how you do it. And the first place you need to check are the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Rules and Regulations. You're listening to the Bell and Pollock Legal Show. Gary Bell, Brad Pollock. We're the owners of our law firm. Our firm is Bell and Pollock. Our website, championsofthepeople.com. That's championsofthepeople.com. It's an information-loaded website. So you can go there and get a lot of answers to a lot of your questions without even talking to an attorney. And you can call us at any time at 303-795-5900. In the mountains, you can call us at 970-870-8989. Next week, we're going to do another sequel on trucking, and we're going to cover different subjects, so you can join us then. We are Colorado's premier injury law firm, and we are your champions of the people.